Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about improving your small talk. Making your small talk so good that the other person actually wants to put in effort. They want to open up, to answer your questions in full detail, to participate in this conversation because they genuinely enjoy being around you. Like, they find you a fun presence and want to make an effort. So this is something I really used to struggle with because for a long time I believed there was something different about me, whether it was my communication style or my personality. I believed for a long time that I just was kind of boring or people weren't interested in me. Because that's what the evidence in front of me was saying to me up to that point. It was like, I could literally see the moment that the other person like checked out of a conversation emotionally. Like, I could see it in their eyes when they'd like lose interest in what I was talking about and then eventually come up with some excuse to leave. Like, this happened so many times. And I'd often bump into the same people at parties, people who I'd met before, and they just wouldn't remember who I was. So I became quite paranoid. Am I just like a boring person? And I tried to focus on the other person more often because I thought this was where I was going wrong. When I didn't have a lot of things to talk about, when I risked making it awkward because I just couldn't think of where to take this conversation next, I'd always ask the other person a lot of questions. Try and find out what they like, see if we had anything in common, and then just spam that, just keep talking about that. But the thing is, that didn't help me. That made me less unique in conversations. I feel like this almost like took my personality from me in a way. But yeah, people would end up losing interest even faster when I did that. I remember people just giving me like a lot of one-word answers when I'd ask them questions. Like, they're saying to me in anything but words then, I'd rather just like end this conversation here, to like not let this conversation go any further, than kind of continue talking about what we were talking about. Like, that's what people really mean when they give you a one-word answer. Like, it's kind of a blunt way of putting it, but they're just not really that interested. And what would really frustrate me is I'd look over to my friends. Like, I had like a very social group of friends at university, and their conversations would look like so hype, like so much energy. Like, I'd look to my left and I'd see like one of my friends just like high-fiving a bunch of girls, and they all look like really enthusiastic and like they're enjoying the things he's talking about. Whereas with me, it was just the complete opposite of that. And what was frustrating to me was the fact that like I was putting in effort. I was making an effort to talk about things that like maybe I wasn't even that interested in because I thought that's what the other person was interested in. But I'm not getting anything back. I'm making an effort. This isn't even that fun for me. You know, the least they could do is show a bit of an interest, but that's how it was. And I remember often thinking like, sometimes I wish like, maybe it would be better for me to be like disliked or hated, because at least then people would actually feel something about me, like remember me. So I'm going to talk about the mistake that so many people commonly make, which leads to this, which leads to you coming across in like a more boring way and kind of like stops your small talk in its tracks. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. The reason is you're probably more focused on the other person's fun than your fun. Most people are too wrapped up in trying to entertain the other person, in trying to be a good little conversationalist and ask them loads of questions and make it about them, that we end up sacrificing our unique voice, our unique personality, our individualism that we bring to a conversation, when these are the things that make us fun and interesting to talk to. So there's this idea called the law of state transference, which basically dictates whatever spectrum of emotions, whatever you're feeling right now, in a conversation, that energy inevitably, whether you like it or not, whether you even realize, ends up rubbing off on the other person. So imagine like I'm talking to someone, I'm feeling like a little bit sad or annoyed about something else that can happen. It can be completely unrelated. Oftentimes what can end up happening is this person might think I'm like kind of annoyed at them. I'm not annoyed at them, but I'm carrying this like emotional energy into the conversation. And then they end up feeling maybe like a little bit like agitated or annoyed. Like probably a better example is if you ever spend time around like a really negative person, you leave the room feeling like more negative than before. You end up feeling like a little bit drained. And that is because of the law of state transference. You end up feeling whatever they felt in the moment. It sounds like some woo-woo shit, but this is like so fucking true. Like you can try it out. But the reason so many people are not fun to talk to is because when you're focusing on entertaining the other person and you're wrapped up in thoughts of like, am I boring them? Are they enjoying themselves? You end up like portraying either quite like needy energy, or that's how it's interpreted, or it can honestly be like quite like muted. Like someone put your personality on mute. It's quite flat because you're not, oftentimes when we force ourselves to talk about things that actually like we're really not interested in because we think that's what someone else wants to talk about, that comes across in our like emotional expression. Like how can we get excited about something that we don't care about? It sounds like quite a black and white way of looking at conversations, and it goes against like a lot of the conventional advice. But the gist of it is, in the simplest terms possible, if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying what this conversation is going about, what am I trying to say? If you're not enjoying the direction this conversation is going in, then the other person will not be able to. Because your emotional energy is flat. And they end up feeling that exact range of emotions. So what would I propose you do instead in this situation? And this is going to sound really backwards, really against the grain of what you've probably heard so far. But if you want to make your small talk better, if you want to make it more enjoyable, not just for them, but for you, I'd actually suggest steering the conversation towards something you actually want to talk about. If you can sense this conversation is like dying a slow death, maybe they're giving you like one-word answers, or they look disinterested, I actually recommend steering the conversation or even opening a conversation with something that you really want to talk about, something that you're passionate about. This can be completely anything. It's almost about like injecting some of your personality back into this like stale conversation. But something I do on my travels is when I'm meeting like lots of international people and they tell me where they're from, I always think of like a football team. Like this is one of my big passions, football. I always think of a football team or a football player, and whether or not they're interested in football, that's just what I start talking about. And oftentimes I do have common ground, especially with guys, because a lot of guys like football. But even if they don't, it's just something I can talk about, something that I'm passionate about, and I'm bringing the right kind of energy. Because I'm passionate about this topic and I naturally find it fun to talk about, it's a good way of getting the ball rolling, of like, no pun intended, of setting the right tone in this conversation, a fun tone. Another way we can do this is by leaning into the things that we find funny, our sense of humor. So a lot of people around new people, or people that they don't feel totally secure around, we often like filter our sense of humor. We talk ourselves out of making jokes because we think, oh, they're not going to land. Maybe they don't understand my humor. But I actually think if you're focused on your own fun, if your objective is to generate those good vibes for the people around you, if something funny comes into my head, like a joke or a thought, either related to the situation we're in or even unrelated, oftentimes I'm going to say it because I know that I find it funny. When we're making jokes, I feel like the worst thing we can do is let our like opinion of the joke be influenced by like how we believe it's going to be like perceived. I'm not talking about anything offensive, to be clear, but let's imagine I make a joke and before I laugh at it, I wait to see how like other people react to it after I said it. That kind of kills the point of the joke. Like if you find it funny, laugh. Like you probably have many moments throughout the day where you see something funny and regardless of who's around, you laugh. You laugh to yourself. We need to carry that same energy into conversations. Lean into humor, lean into what you find funny. And we're going to touch on this a little bit more later. And then the final way you can do this is by asking questions, but not asking boring questions. And what constitutes a boring question? For me, it's a question you don't actually care to know the answer to. A lot of people open small talk with questions like, oh, what do you do for work? Or where are you from? These questions are boring to me because you're not actually asking them with like intent. You don't really care about the answer. You just care about like keeping the conversation going almost. Or you're just trying to be polite, but really you're not that like curious to know. So for me, I like to ask questions which feel unique, which almost stand out. And importantly, are things that I actually want to like know the answer to. So that's another good way we can do it. So I'm just going to get into some like objections that you might be feeling right now. Like, sorry, I don't know what's going on in my throat right now. I think a lot of people would see this video and think, but yeah, isn't all of your advice that you've talked about here, like, couldn't that be interpreted as like a little bit selfish? For me, it's actually the opposite of selfish, because it's like, if you knew that 9 times out of 10, because of the law of state transference, they were actually going to enjoy this conversation more if you steered it towards something that you actually wanted to talk about. If you knew they were going to have more fun, even if that involved you talking about something that you find interesting, wouldn't that be like the non-selfish thing to do? Like, you're keeping this conversation alive by doing this. It's going to be more fun for the both of you. I kind of don't, overall, I wouldn't see this as selfish. Like, sure, it could be considered like a little bit selfish to only talk about things we want to talk about. But in other ways, like, if we're asking them questions, like unique questions that not everyone would be asking them, or we're showing genuine curiosity instead of like this like fake polite bullshit, I feel like that makes the other person feel like listened to, feel important. So I guess it's about finding a balance between like talking about things that we really want to talk about, like we're leading the conversation, but we're also giving them some input, but making sure that you're like asking genuine questions. And the other thing is, what if they don't like my humor? Or what if they don't want to talk about the things that I want to talk about? I think that even if you're like, using the example of humor, even if your sense of humor isn't compatible, like not everyone is going to get your sense of humor. I feel like most people, they end up, if you were to see someone like laughing and having a good time, like maybe if you're like me, like I just act like a bit of an idiot when I'm out in public, or when I'm like having a social time. If you see me laughing, even if it's about something like, even if it's because I said something stupid or childish or something only I'm going to find funny, if you saw me smiling, I feel like most people, without even realizing, they're reading that as a cue and they would probably start smiling. Like, that's how it tends to work. If you see someone happy and having a good time, that makes you feel happy. That is the power of the law of state transference. I'm putting out like an attractive kind of energy because I'm authentically having a good time. I'm having fun. And yeah, I've kind of witnessed this in effect recently because I've been away on my travels and I had so much fun on some of these like nights out, like going to bars and stuff. And I'm talking to like loads of strangers and just making jokes, just being authentic. And I actually had like a bunch of people just like come into the conversation or come into the group and like introduce themselves. And I like to think that's because I looked like I was having fun. That was like my only mission on these nights. It was like have as much fun as possible. And everything else just flows naturally after that. So this video is getting kind of long. I'm probably going to end this now. But if there's one thing to focus on throughout all your small talk, one question to ask yourself, is it, am I trying to impress people right now? Am I trying to make sure they're having a good time? Or am I having a good time? And if I'm not having a good time, how can I introduce that fun back into the conversation? How can I make myself have a good time? That is all. I'll see you in the next one.